All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast, and we've got an amazing episode for you today. We are going to talk about the number one hack that every property investor needs to know, Ben, but remarkably, heaps of people still don't know about it. What is it?
Well, Bryce, we are going into case study mode, and we are looking to find all these hidden cash flow opportunities for you. So it's definitely one not to miss.
Definitely not one to miss, and a special guest as well. Let's rip into the show.
Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast. And of course, then there was one. Ben, how are you?
Well, mate, I know nothing about football. Like, I absolutely know nothing about football. Let me give you a little indication in terms of my football prowess and my skill in understanding the game of football. I had Geelong winning by 32 points or more.
Yeah.
I had Max home as Norm Smith.
Yeah.
And my first goal was Patrick Dangerfield, and I said he'd get a free kick to kick the first goal. So how close was I?
You weren't very close at all, mate. To be honest, I had Max Holmes as a Norm Smith anyway. But mate, what an incredible performance in the second half. So and I guess the thing for you is you got beat by the Premier, which is nice to know. At least you know you never want to get beat by the runner-up.
Oh, it was just an interesting game, wasn't it? First half was really tight and dour, and then bang, just opened up in that second half. Now, that wasn't your first grand final, was it? But you're obviously there. Tell us, tell what was the vibe like at the start of the day?
Mate, I was struggling health-wise, so I
of course.
I just turned up, watched the game, went home. That's pretty much.
But good news is you weren't one of the two people who didn't show up. Right.
Yeah.
The maximum capacity is 100,024.
Yeah.
And they had 100,022 people there. Yeah. So at least you showed up, mate. At least you showed up.
At least I was there, which was nice.
No, congratulations to the Brisbane Lions back to back.
Yes.
Hope they don't go back to back to back with all of the recruits they're about to get as well.
Yeah, it's looking like Richmond. When Richmond was recruiting Tom Lynch and everything, they'd won a couple. So anyway. Yeah. Hey, a little shout out to our community. We are in the shadows of summer series.
Yes.
Just had one of our guests is a little bit unsure on whether they want to go on, a bit nervous, all that sort of stuff, Ben. So just a reminder to our community, there might be another spot available, and we're going to then go through and have a look at all the entrants and see what they look like, so that we can get a really great cross section of stories for our summer series.
Yeah, love it.
If that's you and you hearing this for the first time, there's a small window, thepropertycouch.com.au/my story. We'd love to hear from you. And little hint, ladies, we'd love to hear from you too. So,
and Bryce, what are we after? Silver bullet and all stories of done it, living off the passive income. They are the two sort of silver bullet lessons.
Yeah, we're obviously a big theme for us throughout the year on the podcast is trying to inform our community on what the predators look like these days, Ben. So if someone comes in and shows us what that means for them personally, A, it's cathartic for the person who's talking about it, and two, it also means that we can shine a light on some of these practices. And next week's episode on Q&A, Ben, we've got someone who's written into us talking about some of these practices. So we're going to...
can't wait to have a go at that one.
We're going to talk to that as well. And Ben, we've got an audiobook that we've been busy pulling together. You and I have tried a style where at the end of each major section, you and I have a bit of a chin wag at the end of the book. So it's the book as it's written, and then some interaction with you and I at the end. We had a lot of fun pulling that together. So we're very close to the pointy end of releasing that. So if you want to be the first to find out, Ben, go to the wait list on how to retire on 3K. k.com.au. That's as it sounds, how to retire on number 3, k.com.au, and you'll be the first to know with all of the bonuses.
And shout out to all of those amazing people, the thousands of people who have already bought our book. Very kind of you. Hopefully you've got a lot of great value out of it. So, and this one now we're about to release the audio version. So thank you to those people who have decided to take action and get educated on some of the critical fundamentals as we see the world of property investing.
Yes, and Ben, as we're speaking, it's the 2nd of October, which means the 5% deposit scheme is now in full play. So what does that mean?
Well, it just means obviously that now first-home buyers, the government have brought forward this opportunity for first-home buyers to get into the market. So, your investment-savvy broker can also moonlight very strongly in the first-home buyer space and in the owner-occupied space. I mean, so yes, you would be wanting to talk to a broker about this so you understand the thresholds, what it means to you, whether you're eligible. Reach out to your mortgage broker. And of course, if you don't have one, Empower Wealth, our broking business, which has won another national award recently, Best Customer Service. So we're thrilled about that. So reach out to Empower Wealth and request to speak to a mortgage broker, and ultimately they can tell you more about it.
Our team are fully across that at empowerwealth.com.au. We'd love to be able to serve you and help you with that. As Ben said, if you don't have an investment savvy mortgage broker. Hey, we've got a very exciting guest today, Ben. Returning guest to the podcast, but is talking about a topic that is very, very important. It's effectively a way to get money from the ATO that they're not entitled to, but if you don't know about it, they're not going to ring you up and remind you. So we have a very far-ranging conversation with our guest today. His name's Brad Beer. Let's cut to the interview you and I recently had with Brad Beer. All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast. So we've got a very special guest on the couch today. We are talking to a returning guest. His name is Brad Beer. He's a quantity surveyor, tax depreciation specialist, and the CEO of BMT Tax Depreciation, one of Australia's most recognised names in depreciation. Do you like that, mate? He spent his career
around for a while.
You definitely like
it. It took me 27 years.
He spent his career helping investors unlock legitimate deductions, turning dense legislation into practical cash flow outcomes through clear. This is to show my
you're doing
Division
really well.
40, i.e., plant and equipment, and Division 43. Capital work strategies. Brad's a familiar educator. I know, I'm on fire. He's a familiar educator at industry events and in the media for his knack of demystifying when to claim, what to claim, and how to stay ATO compliant. We're excited to tap into his expertise that is, Ben, and pick his brain today. Welcome back to the Property Couch, Brad.
Yay! Welcome
Great
back.
to be here, gents.
Hey, it's so long, 4 years.
It's taken a little while.
Hey,
I love you throwing out a few divisions there as well.
Yeah, well,
it's a bit fancy.
See what I did there? So what's the opening question for you? What's the most expensive myth about established properties that you wish every investor would unlearn today?
Second-hand or established properties still have some depreciation.
Okay, we're done here. Let's wrap it up.
It is. Like I still feel like almost every day of my life, I have someone say to me, "Oh, but it's old." I'm like, still ask a question.
Yes.
Old means it won't have as much depreciation as a new property. We know new shiny stuff, it costs more, it's worth more, it gets more depreciation. But second-hand property still gets deduction. It doesn't get as much, but why don't we ask someone who does know whether we can get something before we worry about the age, because age doesn't always matter.
Yeah, we're gonna delve into that. We actually, for those watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. But for those that are listening, we're going to go into some detail and we're going to explain it to you, so that'll be fine. But look, you've been a returning guest. There's not many people who've cut the multiple laps that you have on the couch, and the reason that we keep inviting you back is two reasons. One, we enjoy your company, and two, I think the message that you have to give to property investors is so incredibly important, because for a property investor, there's cash deductions and non-cash deductions, and not maximising your non-cash deductions is just dumb. It's nothing short of dumb.
The non-cash deduction just makes such a substantial difference to the cash flow. We pay something out, we make a deduction for it, that's okay. It's a deduction without paying it out. And it just makes such a bigger difference to the cash flow. Every dollar of non-cash deduction is much better than $1 of a cash paid out tax deduction.
Yeah. So because it's so important, Ben, we're just gonna some
basics.
Yeah,
and new members of our community. It's been 4 years.
Yeah, it's important.
But I think it's important.
So we are going to ask you some Dorothy Dix questions, Brad, that you've answered a billion times in your career, but I think they're important.
Yep.
So why should people care? So someone who's new to our community and they are trying to get their head, okay, you've just introduced non-cash deduction and depreciation. Unpack it.
I mean, depreciation is a term we understand easiest probably when we think about our car. If we buy a new one, we drive it out, it goes down in value, it depreciates. If we use that car for business, then the tax office will allow us to make a deduction for that wear and tear, decline in value on that car. With properties, it's got similarity in the fact that the carpet's wearing out, the bricks and mortar eventually are wearing out. The difference is we want the property to appreciate in value. Now the property should go up in value. The land is what's going up in value, but your carpet's wearing out, your bricks are wearing out, they take a bit longer. Your concrete eventually wears out and they eventually this, I guess, house becomes defunct and no longer useful. The tax office allows us to make a tax deduction for the loss in value of the carpet, the loss in value of the bricks, if we're using it as an investment property. Why do we care? Why do we need to know something about that? Because it's a non-cash tax deduction, as we said, and it's the second biggest deduction most investors will make, and it makes a substantial difference. And this is the thing I guess, whether you call it frustrated or I've seen over time, is I'm still coming up against investors that are buying investment properties and they don't really know what it is, and it makes such a big difference to your cash flow.
Yeah.
The second biggest difference, do you say, behind interest, really, for most people that carry debt?
And interest is a cash deduction, so you have to pay it.
Yeah.
It's the second biggest deduction that you don't pay for. And people are still ringing me when they bought a property a year ago or whenever and going, what is this? What's it about? I'm like, understanding what it is just makes such a big difference to cash flow sometimes that I think, we're trying to make money out of these properties.
Well, we're in the business of running private rental accommodation. So if anyone who's self-employed and buys a tradies car and buys tools, they can write those tools off. Now there's different, sometimes the government brings in instant asset write-off as opposed to writing them down over the period of time. Can you explain to us the two different main themes in terms of depreciation, in terms of fixtures and fittings, as well as the material? So
you have one claim against the structure. The Division 43.
Yeah, I was going to say, why don't you throw that to me, mate, based on my intro? I know all this stuff.
Guest needs to.
Hey, I was supposed to be the expert.
No, that's
what we are the expert is actually coming up with those numbers. The Division 43 is just a part that you get to claim, or the building allowance is another word for it, against the concrete, the hard stuff, the brick walls, the things that last a long time. In order to claim that, it needs to be built since 1987. I want you to forget about age, but 87 is an important date that makes a difference. Don't worry about whether or not you do something, but that component is something that you get a percentage of the construction cost each year over 40 years. The other component, the Division 40, Bryce, is the things that we deem as are called plant and equipment or fixtures and fittings, the things that don't last as long. Carpet doesn't last as long as your bricks. A stove wears out quicker than your bricks or breaks down. Dishwashers. These type of things, there's about 170 of them in a property, not in every property, 170 items that they make a list of, that go, okay, it's not going to last as long, it's going to last 10 years or 12 years, and we claim it over that period instead of over the full 40 years. There is a few rules around those things. They need to be bought at the moment, they need to be new in order for you to claim them, and that's been changed over a few years ago, but that's the other component. It's not always available. The building allowance, provides the right date, is always available.
Now, I'm going to give you another layup, but I think it's important. Are you really necessary? Can't my accountant do this?
Yeah, and the reason we get involved is around the legislation, etc. But it's not really, because the Division 43 legislation all comes down to a value. You buy your car, you drive it out, you know the value because you bought it and you see it go down. The property, you're buying a property, it's got bricks in it. How much do they cost? You don't know how much the bricks actually cost. A quantity surveyor, which is what I am, is someone who's recognised by the tax office or by others as a relevant professional to estimate construction costs. So if you don't have all of these actual costs, then we would go and count the bricks and measure up the concrete. We don't really count the bricks, but effectively we can count the bricks that are there as a quantity surveyor and tell you how much it should cost to put them there. So we come up with basically the number for construction cost that matters because the claims for that Division 43 or that claim relate to that construction cost. And also the value of the other items in there. How much did all the things, you buy a house from a builder, how much did the stove cost? You don't actually know. So we go in and we put a cost or a value on that stove and work out the depreciation based on what the costs are. My bit's actually the cost bit because that's what we are. We're construction related coster people, I suppose.
Now, I'm going to ramp up the challenge a little bit higher. There's two methods in which the calculations are done. Can you tell me the history of those methods, Brad?
Oh, there you go. Look at that. So you can do them under what's called diminishing value or prime cost. And the building itself all goes under the prime cost. Prime cost is a percentage, or probably an example is an easy way to explain that. If something has a 10-year effective life, as in it lasts 10 years, or the tax office says it should last 10 years, then if it's a $1,000 item, and it's got a 10-year life, you kind of get a straight amount of that each year, or $100 per year. I'll call it 1,001, otherwise it falls into a different department. But anyway, you get 10% of it each year, and it's the same amount each year for that period of time. Mm-hmm. The other, diminishing value, as it's called, and as the name suggests, it's a diminishing amount each year. It's a higher percentage, usually twice as much. So the same item would get 20% in the first year, as opposed to 10%. And each year, rather than it being the same amount each year, it's 20% of what value is left. So on that item, it would be 20% of the first year would be $200. The second year would be $200 of the $800 of the value that is left. Diminishing value prime cost. There's some more detailed case studies if you want to read about that. I don't get it from that.
But you prepare both options in the report, yes. And then the client can choose. But most people, do you get enough anecdotal evidence to know? You'd think because they need the cash flow help up front, would most people choose to?
It almost doesn't make sense to put the prime cost schedule in there.
Yeah.
The time you would use it, we give you them both because there's two methods, right? Yeah. But the time you may use it is if you know you're on a lower tax bracket income for the next 2 or 3 years, and then you're going to get a big pay rise, and you're putting up into a different tax bracket, and you want to spread out your deductions. I don't think there's many people that are in that position to know that.
Show me the money.
I want money now.
Yeah, the cash flow impacts on diminishing value. So that's the one you should be looking at with your accountant once you've got the report from BMT.
I've told this story before. I think it's important for the new listeners who are hearing this conversation, for semi-first time, that a mate of mine, who was a flatmate when I was still living in Perth, this is back in, it was either 1999 or 2000, I introduced the concept of a depreciation schedule to him, and he's like, huh, what is that? And so we rolled out the conversation we've just had now, and he's gone, I've got 2 other properties that I have had they were in Kingscliff in northern New South Wales. And so at the time you could go back, I think 4 years, which has changed. You can tell us the update now. But so I said, hey, listen, by the way, not only that, you can actually go and amend your tax returns for the last 4 years as a result of the Epiphany bomb and going back and amending he unlocked a refund that allowed him to buy another property on the Gold Coast, because at the time we were buying them for $110,000 or something like that. So it was
really gold now.
Yeah, I do. You're the same vintage. So but it's that powerful and that important. Can you give us an update how far we can go back?
So the 4 years, unfortunately, some years ago now has changed to 2 years. But the thing I see is so many investors aren't doing it properly, and if they thought it was old and you couldn't do it, for example, and if it's like, and I guess it's like if you don't pay your tax in this country, eventually the tax office will find you and make you pay it, right? This is just working the other direction. You just can't go back forever. You can only go back 2 years. But if you haven't been claiming your depreciation that you could have, or even if you haven't claimed as much as you could have, if you've been claiming $1,000 and it should have been $5,000, you can actually go back and amend and claim the difference for up to 2 tax returns. So depending on what part of the year you're in, like when you think about another tax return, don't do another one and miss out on another year.
So let me double click on that, because there are accountants out there who think that they can actually do these schedules, right, on behalf of their clients. And they think they're doing potentially the right thing. But you and I have had conversations about this. What you just said then is it still could be worthwhile with one phone call in talking to someone around the potential that you've missed out on 30%, 40% of the potential full deduction because you haven't used a quantity surveyor to get that work done?
Absolutely. So if there is something in your tax return, now, and we do this all the time.
Yep.
Like we've got the calculators on, the apps that you can go in and put a bit of information about your property, and it'll tell you what sort of deductions should be there. You can even get a little bit better than that and go, Brad, 27 Smith Street in wherever it is, what sort the calculator says it should be $3,000 to $5,000. Do you think that's
reasonable?
Reasonable, right? We'll have a look at the photos. It doesn't cost you anything. Have a look at the photos. Yeah, 3,000 to 5,000 good. Maybe even 6,000. And if you're only claiming 1,000 or 2,000, then maybe you should get a depreciation schedule and see if you can get the rest. And we would always have a look at something and give you an idea of what sort of deduction is going to be there. And really, the accountant, they're our friends. Most of our work comes from the accountant.
Yes, absolutely.
But the thing the accountants will find as time has gone on when we keep doing this is that the risk is that the client comes to them and says, "Have you doing this properly for me?" With one of those estimates. And we tell the accountants that when we have that. We offer to accountants to review anything. And look, if they hadn't done it as good as it could be done for whatever reason, then it's best to fess up and go, you know what, let's get it looked at. As time goes on, you learn more things. Older property still gets deductions. They may have thought it wasn't there. And they know about depreciation. They know it's there, but sometimes they think the older property may not be worth it. But our job is to go and get what we can out of properties. We visit it, we look at it, we see what's there. If it's had some work done at some point that someone else has done in the past, there might be some deductions for that. So we go and find what we can find and get the most out of it.
And there are operators and there are operators.
Yeah, I was about to say, because there's two things that we should talk about here. Because one is...
Yeah, I can get a cheap one online where they don't go and inspect the property, and that's when I'm robbing myself of cash flow.
Yeah, because you've got price disparity and you've got inspection disparity. Can you talk to those two?
Yeah, so in price disparity, a lot of that comes around because of an inspection. Obviously, not going and ringing up the property manager and the tenant and organising a convenient time and coming through, can I take photos of all your house? That's not the fun part, right? Yeah. So if you don't go and do an inspection as a quantity surveyor, then obviously it's cheaper for you to do the job. My opinion, and we've done nearly a million of these things, is that you will not always get the best result. And our job is to get the best result, I believe. Now, for all of my time in this, just about, there's been someone that will do one online based on some photos they can see on Domain or realestate.com and hope they're the right ones. Since COVID, because it got really hard to inspect properties for a period of time there, lots of our industry went to doing it that way, a bit more. Yep. We held our jobs through that and said, we want to do them properly, and explain to the client that we think the best result comes when you visit it and find everything, and making sure you can stand, not just finding everything to maximise, but stand behind it. Tax office rings up about one of our reports. They go, here's the photos.
We went there.
Pulled up on this day for this long, and the GPS told me so. So I know he went there, or she.
And because those other photos, coming back to the 170 odd items, if I don't have the photo there, I can't see that item, and I can't claim that item. Yes. But if I've been out there,
do they protect their downside just by going conservative on the number then? So it's obviously a cheaper entry price, but they haven't. The net result is that if they could have got 6,000, they might come back with 3,900 or something.
Yeah, or they might come back with 4,900. It's still not 6.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you can't see it, then you can't put it on there on a depreciation schedule. When we go there with a guy, with a person who's been trained to do this job, to look for everything, we're looking for everything. And I am not convinced, even though now a lot of our industry since COVID, I don't know, through COVID suddenly you got enough data and you can do it, and then after COVID we keep doing it. We stood our ground and said we're going to inspect them. And look, the Institute of Quantity Surveyors believes you should inspect. There should be disclaimers all over it if you don't, etc. Now, when our industry does what it does, I think it's a false economy. Now, in saying that, can I get it pretty close by looking at the photos? Yes. But there'll be a certain percentage of the time, it'll be quite a bit, that I might miss something because it's not in the photo. And we can go and see this new renovated kitchen with these lovely bench tops and everything else that's been done around that. And the photo on realestate.com might show the kitchen, but it won't necessarily show all the work that's been done on the house, maybe by a previous owner. I want to make sure we get that every time.
So people are going to be screaming out to sort of say, well, what do these things cost if they're new to this sort of space? So what are we talking about in terms of, because the other thing you just mentioned was the $6,000. What we left out of that is that's in year one, but there might be 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 or in some cases a full 40 years of that diminishing value that we're going to be able to claim. So what are we talking about in terms of a typical upfront price?
Typical upfront price for depreciation schedule is about $800.
Okay. Plus GST?
Plus GST.
Okay. So that sort of gives you some idea. But potentially, and we're going to look at a couple of case studies.
I think it's important to,
because we'll bring it home with the case studies, right?
But say you could get a cheaper one. I think we should land the plane, right? For every $1,000 additional claims that you can find, because remember they're non-cash deductions, not cash deductions. For every $1,000 at 37 cents in the dollar, that's $370 that you're missing out for every $1,000 you're not finding. So compare that against the upfront saving that you can get for the depreciation. And we should declare a couple of things to our listeners, Ben. One, Brad's been a friend of ours for a long time. We've been a supporter of his business for a long time. And
much appreciated.
Yeah. But I think what's important is that's not a friendship thing that's dictating that. It's because they get the best outcomes.
Correct.
And then the friendship thing.
Do we get paid for referrals to you, Brad?
No.
We don't. But what we have organised is for our own clients.
100%.
And also Property Couch. And we'll give a link to this later that Brad just quoted a price. You can actually get a discount on that if you quote the Property Couch. But I think, so it sounds like we're giving Brad a platform to say, hey, look, what you're doing is amazing. But it's because we genuinely believe that it's the best outcome.
There is no gain in here for us other than
zero.
your cash flow gain or a cheaper depreciation, because Brad is offering that to our community.
Yeah.
So there's no self-interest in that other than the self-interest.
Well, I think that's
of
just
the
important
outcome,
to declare, right?
I think it is. And I come back to that point around, if you're thinking that's a lot up front, that's tax deductible.
Yes.
And to that point also, it's written, you're getting that depreciation over a long period of time. Now, people might say, is there a catch? There is a slight catch in the sense that because you're forward booking that depreciation, it is adjusted for in the capital value if you sell the property. So you may have to pay it back, but I can't stress enough, and we've said this every time you've been on, and that is that cash flow keeps me in the game, Bryce. And I'm looking to get the long-term value out of that game. And if you hold the property indefinitely, and if you're a buy and hold and you hang around, you get the cash flow benefit to start with, which helps either pay the debt down and you save on interest, or to Bryce's flatmate's point, you get a chance to potentially accumulate higher to your portfolio.
Can I add something on the CGT,
the
capital gains tax? Is that you say there, the fact is, when you claim these deductions on the way through owning the property, when you do sell the property, you will have a high capital gains tax bill.
Yes.
But when you run, and we've run case studies on this, and you can get them or
if there's a link, we might put it in the show notes if there's a link to reading about it.
When you make your depreciation deductions, you make them at your full marginal tax rate. When you pay capital gains tax, providing you've owned the property for more than a year, you paid it half of your marginal tax rate. Yep. So you said, but you might have to pay it back. When you run the numbers, you actually don't have to pay as much of it back.
You pay 50% of it back.
Not only do you get it now, you get more. Even if you did have to pay it all back at the end, you'd look at the time value of the money and using it to reduce your debt in between and go, I've got to keep it there to pay it back later. You do need to keep some because you've got to pay some back. Yep. But you don't pay back as much as what you actually get in your pocket. So and I have had the people that say to me, like, well, I've got to pay it back at the end. Like, but you paid less back, so you keep some.
Correct. And the fact that
you get to use it.
And you stayed in the game because of what we did up front to make sure that you could stay in the game longer.
The math is all in favour of doing this. That's why but a good segue into our
let's
teaching,
talk to the math. Yeah.
Let's talk to the teaching.
Okay. So we're going to set this up. So for our audio listeners, we're going to be talking to some tables, and we're going to do a lot. We're going to put a lot of energy into make sure that if you aren't watching, you'll still get this. But for those of you that are watching on YouTube, you'll see this. But you've done some analysis, Brad, in your book of clients to see certain age brackets and overall average returns. So I'd love you to talk to some of that and talk to some of the takeaways.
Yeah. And we sort of pull these things together each year out of interest to see what type of properties that we're doing the work on and what's the change in the average deductions. And I think one of the biggest takeaways to me out of the 24-25 financial year that we're looking at is that the average first year overall deduction was about $12,105. Now, that has actually increased a little bit over the last few years. It was about 11,000 something the year before, and it was about 9 or 10, and then back to 9 over the last few years. So it's been going up over the last few years. Now, one reason behind that is, I don't know if you've been around and tried to build anything lately, but construction costs are substantially up. And remember, the claims relate
6% up since COVID.
The claims relate to the construction costs, so I expect that to continue to rise and get up even higher. And also the percentage of different types of properties we do. In the latest year, we seem to have just leaned towards doing a few more properties that do get more deductions. So therefore that average is a little up.
Before we move on from this chart and to our, obviously, listeners online, pre-1987, that was the critical year that Brad mentioned before, but you can see there that of the jobs you did, it's representing 3.5%, but the first year deduction was 4,693 on average.
Yes.
So back to your point and back to the very first question you asked me, what's the biggest message we need to get through? Just because it's old doesn't necessarily mean that there's no depreciation in it, which means you're giving away potential cash flow advantages here. So please.
It's just dumb. To ignore it's just dumb.
Don't do it. Just
ring. It is, and I was about to get to that. Like it's a thing to draw out of that. It has reduced in the percentage of the jobs. It's only 3.5% of the jobs that we did in the 24-25 financial year, but it still had an average out of the ones we did do, $4,600 in deductions in the first year. They don't run out in the second year. There's still more deductions available. So always ask the question, is what we said earlier. And that's what you should absolutely
I've got my calculator here. So for established properties pre-87, $4,693 is what they'll get back. It'll cost them $880 to get the depreciation report. So that's $3,813. And let's just do simple maths of 37 cents. There's complexity in that, but that'll do. That's $1,410 net in the first year that you're ahead. Net. Before you talk about the fact that in year 2 you don't pay the fee again. And year 3, you don't pay the fee again. Yeah. So why would you give them the money?
It kind of makes sense.
Well, let's jump to 22-23, Bryce, just to have a quick look at what we're just talking about there. So you can see there. So 3.1% of the jobs, 3,800 was for the older properties. But you can see even those newer properties at 21, 20 to 24, about 16 grand. But the average there was 11,400 across all of the schedules
for the whole year. Yes.
Yep.
So, a slightly like the percentage of those old ones has dropped that we do because some of them aren't worth it. But as we say, just ask the question, and if I tell you it's not worth it, we don't do it.
The average of the second-hand properties is 6,661.
Yes.
So strip out the newies, and that's still pretty handy.
Well, let's do the maths again, so everyone at home knows exactly what we're talking about. The average is 6,661. Let's minus the 880. Now, if they property couch, they'll get it. If they'll get it cheaper. They'll get it cheaper. But let's go conservative. Yep. That's $5,781 as a non-cash deduction, and times that by 37 cents. It's
without the Medicare levy. There you go. Yeah.
It's 2,001.
There's a couple little nuances.
But like just roughly $2,000, right? Yeah. For people just for putting their hand up to say. Ask the question.
And where does that $2,100 go? Straight in your offset.
Straight in your offset.
And how much are you saving on an offset at 5% of $2,000? You know, quick maths probably says that's $25 a month of additional saving of interest. that's going to build up.
It's just it's lazy at the tax office. I don't know if I love the way they spend some of the money. So I don't know why we give it to them.
Oh, don't warm me up about government spending.
The interesting thing, and I don't have the numbers right here, but we have written some stuff on it. The tax office releases the data on the average claims that are made by property investors each year.
Yeah.
It's not quite an eggs for eggs measurement, but it's somewhere around the $3,000 mark is the average claimed. Now, it's not a direct comparison to our average of $12,000 because the person that only claims their stove is still in their figures and not doing the rest of it. So not direct,
point.
but still, what is being claimed is substantially less than what we're claiming, and it's it's because people are leaving it there, I suppose.
So let's go to another example.
Go to another example. And while we're doing that, Brad, I've got a property in Esperance or Alice Springs or Ulladulla. Can you still help them?
Yeah, we go to Alice Springs on a reasonably regular basis. We travel. We just put a bunch of the jobs together in those distance areas. When we do Ulladulla, that's not hard. That's easy. That's just part of Sydney. No, it's not part of Sydney. Sorry, the Ulladulla people.
They'll take offence.
I was just thinking that. My staff, there's a couple of hundred staff in my organisation. They're actually spread around the country a fair bit. So Ulladulla's easy because we actually have people that are close to that, and we have them spread pretty well. If you are in a big, long way distance area, firstly, and we'd like to get the best results, so we wait till we pull a few jobs together and do it in those areas.
And I put my hand up to go up to the snowfields and do the ones.
You'll do it for him?
Falls Creek. Yeah. I'll run up to a chalet and Falls. True. It just happens to be a late Friday afternoon, so I can spend the weekend have a bit of a ski, and then I'll come back down.
True story. Some years ago,
I know. Go.
I was at Thredbo on a snowboard. I went to the real estate agent, I picked up some keys with my Nokia 5110 in my pocket and some paper, and I did a depreciation schedule.
Hit the photo. Now let's talk renovations and improvements. We'll keep it moving. But there's obviously people now who, they know that, buying old doesn't mean in some cases I can do plant and equipment. So they potentially, and Bryce talks a lot about this, in turning, buy the old and then do the renovations. You've got here renovations and improvements appear in over 66% of the depreciation schedules you do. Can you unpack that a little bit, because people might be going, what does that mean?
So when we got to the point where it's COVID, we want to visit them and we're getting the best results, we actually took an assessment of about 100,000 of the properties that we've done over a couple of year period and said, how often could we miss something? How often, what if we had the original costs? Can we use? Can we whatever? 2/3 of the reports that we did that were secondhand over that period of time had some sort of work done to them after they were built.
2/3
that I may not find if I don't go and see it. I suppose, and that's we bring that stat based on some real. I didn't do a survey of 100 of them. It's based on about 100,000.
And if I bought the house without knowing when the Vigola or the extension was put on, you're going to go out there and say, well, that's definitely the building evidence was built in 1971, and that's definitely an extension that appears to be in the 1990s.
We'll go through whatever places we can to find out when it was done, and then we estimate a cost against that and make sure we come up and get the depreciation that's available. Because, and the big thing about the renovations in that context is that people understand when they spend money and do some renovations, there might be some more deductions there, which is what we're going to draw attention to in a moment. But if someone else spent money after the appropriate dates, sometimes there's some deductions there. And we're going to go and try to find it. We'll find what someone else has spent. It doesn't have to be what you spent. You bought a property, there's something in there, we'll see if we can find it.
You put strategic renovations, you didn't put renovations. What's an example of something that's not a strategic renovation? What's something that people would do that actually isn't going to be in their best interest for renovating?
I as a serial renovator myself over the last 20 odd years, street, is it going to add to my valuation or my rent? My valuation is added to by things like streetscape or whatever it is that does something. Can I make 2 bedrooms into 3 and have a smaller laundry? Can I, thinking about where you're actually spending the money. I think sometimes the risk as a property investor is you try to build your beautiful house. But I go, well, I crunch renovation numbers on a piece of paper that go, well, what if I do this? What difference do I think that will make to my valuation or my rent? or do I need to make the better property as part of that renovation? So just think about what I'm doing.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something strategic in the depreciation lane.
No,
so
no.
it's just value and rent. That makes total sense to me. So
there's not much. The question is, there's not much. Like some things are claimed a bit quicker, but it doesn't really change your decision too often on what you'll put in.
We'll get to scrapping shortly, but you've got a case study here that you want to talk to about an investment property that received a renovation. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, I can talk to that, absolutely. And this is like thinking about the strategic renovation, I guess the return on spending some money on that. Obviously, we'll draw the depreciation difference out of that, but the case study, if it works like this, it's just to think about as renovators, right?
Very healthy.
And we've taken something here, let's say that it was bought for about $720,000 and, in a bit of an old state, rents for $600 a week. $31,200 per year is therefore the cash flow from this property that you collect in rent. Then we look at that and someone puts a kitchen, a bathroom and a bit of a makeover, some solar panels. They get depreciation, save some power bills as well. Spend $95,000. Now, we've ended up with a situation now with $720,000 as a purchase price, $95,000 has been spent on renovation. Then a valuation at the end of that comes up with a valuation of $980,000 because they were strategic and did the right things, hopefully.
Yeah.
So we've made some value uplift. But the other thing is that the rent here, once looking at the property manager's new expected rental, moved from $600 a week to $890 per week, because I've done renovations and got those sort of differences, because they can make a pretty big difference with sometimes some internal renovations that make, a new kitchen and bathroom goes a long way for rental sometimes. And what that means is now our overall incomes come up to $46,280 per year, meaning a difference of about $15,000 in rental income from the year on that $95,000 spend. Now, when I look at a renovation, I go, would I spend the money on that renovation? And do I think I'm going to get a capital uplift first by doing that?
Yeah.
Because I might make 2 bedrooms to 3 or do a new kitchen, bathroom, whatever it actually is. Do I think I can get a capital uplift? Because that's the first, I guess, decision. Well, unless the kitchen's falling apart, doesn't work, you've got to think of a few things.
And a basic rule of thumb on that is 2 for 1. So for every dollar that I put in, I want to get $2 back. This has got a better result. So let's say round it up, we put 100,000 in, and we've got basically effectively 160 back on top of that 100 that we put in there, right?
Which is a great valuation uplift.
Very healthy uplift. Yep.
I don't think you can always get that.
No, I think again, good rule of thumb.
It's going to be strategic.
1 to 2.
Yeah, that's definitely strategic. Extra bedroom, that helped. Yeah.
But the other part of that is I go, well, with my $95,000 spend, with my $290 additional rental, I'm actually getting like a 16% return on my $95,000 in additional cash flow. Correct. So I go, well, if that's increasing my overall yield or cash flow return on my property by making that expenditure, and helps me go, well, yes, I like that renovation because I do get capital uplift, and I do also get a good return on the additional money that I've spent on that renovation.
But that's value and that's yield, but obviously there's a depreciation impact.
Yeah, and sorry. We then draw that back also to look at, well, it does make a depreciation difference. Now, I always, I don't renovate for depreciation. I don't buy for depreciation.
Correct, that would be a little bit silly.
Because you
cart before the horse.
When you renovate, you do have to actually spend the money. It doesn't just come out of part of the purchase. Now, by spending $95,000 on this particular property, the depreciation that was there of $3,985 has now in the next year come up to be a total of $9,993. So on top of my increased yield of 16% on my additional spend, I've also increased my cash flow substantially. I've also increased my depreciation significantly, and we end up with a significant difference in the overall cost of owning this property. It started with, prior to the renovation, being something that was, $247 a week of cost to keep a hold of this property with all the rest of those numbers actually considered. And after doing that renovation and increasing my loan by the $95,000 and therefore having a higher cost to own that property, I mean, I was getting 16% of it. I'm probably paying 6 in additional interest. I just have to be able to borrow that.
Yep.
The cash flow comes down to negative of $73 a week, or after I do this, I've got $174 a week difference in the cost of owning this property after I've done that renovation, got my additional depreciation deductions, and that additional rent and yield. So makes a pretty significant difference if I go crunch those numbers from the start.
But if we zoom out, there's actually it's actually a thesis. It amplifies our underlying thesis around why you would buy established property, because you bought something for $720, or you could go to market and buy another property next door that's the same as this for $980. But if by doing what you've done, you've locked in the land in the better locations.
Correct.
You've increased the value. You've increased the yield on the property. You've clearly improved cash flow through the depreciation scenario here, but it's also forgotten around stamp duty savings, because if you bought at $720 versus now coming to market and buying that property after all the work's done, you're buying stamp duty at $980. There's a saving there as well. So it's something that people really need to think about, and it's the, I guess, the underlying mantra we've had from day one on this podcast is don't buy for depreciation, create it. Because in this case here, you've got all the other 3 fundamentals right: stamp duty savings, increase the value, increase the yield, and you've still been able to create depreciation benefits whilst not being seduced by the shiny taps and the brand new. I know Brad's got a part of his business where he does service the brand new, but just the message for you and me on this podcast, it just underlies the importance of creating depreciation. Don't buy it.
Correct. And if I can put some icing on your cake that you just said there, if I'm buying with the right land to asset ratio, which means that effectively I'm still buying that quite older property, and I've been able to execute on this, my capital growth story is also going to be superior, because effectively I've bought most in land as opposed to improvements. So that combination is a winning combination every day of the week.
Yeah, I've been a keen property investor for 20 years. I had no money to start. I didn't have it. In order to do the next one, I had no choice. I had nothing to borrow against. I needed to grow,
create the equity,
manufacture some equity, so I could actually do the next one, and cash flow as well.
So it's a ripper strategy. And when we do our property planning, we do work on rules of thumb around $1 down for a $2 return, and we're quite conservative, a little bit more conservative on the yield pickup. But that's, remember, because we're doing models, right? We're not actually. But when you get into the weeds, you can actually find these opportunities, right? And you can say, that is a 2-bedroom house that quite easily could be made into a 3-bedroom house with moving this non-structural wall and doing a couple of other things. Well, we can't model that because we don't know where you're going to buy at the time. But when we're doing these models, we basically work on a good rule of thumb, which is $1 down for $2 back in value. We'll then adjust the rental yield appropriately based on that new price, but we won't inflate the overall yield that you're going to get. And off the back of that, it still makes for, a good strategy from a cash flow. We'll then, once the depreciation's done, we'll bleed that depreciation back into the cash flow models. Happy days, in terms of, I didn't expect that level of upside. So we're quite conservative in our modelling, but when we start to put the actuals against the targeted, makes for a lot of good outcomes.
I look, there's a case study there, and I'm always a conservative estimator on what I think I'm going to get, and as long as does it stack on the pessimistic scenario is always the question I'm asking myself. Yeah. Maybe I didn't get 16% on yield on that additional bit of rent, and I got 10. Would I still do it? That's the questions to ask yourself, right? 10, yeah. 10, yeah. And the answer is yes.
And of course you would.
And if I do get 16, great.
Correct.
But having some sort of idea and speaking to the property managers on, if I do this and this, what do you think the rent would look like?
That's your DD. Do your due diligence.
Yeah, is how I normally do those.
Yep, beautiful.
All right, let's stay in the renovating lane. Something else that investors need to know, particularly active investors, is what scrapping is and what that means as an investor, and how they need to know some nuance around that to maximise the deductions. Can you talk to that?
So we've just talked renovations, and in that scenario, I didn't do any scrapping allowance, or an allowance for what would be scrapped. Scrapping is would actually make some of that scenario potentially a little better in the year when you do the scrapping. It does make it a very complex case study if you're trying to put scrapping there as well. Yeah. We've done them if you want to read them, but anyway. Yeah. When we renovate, we throw things away, right? We throw stuff away that was still there. If you throw something away that still had some tax value left, if you want to call it that, then rather than continuing to depreciate it over the time until it runs out of its value, now you've thrown it away or discarded it, you have the opportunity to claim whatever value was left when you throw it away, all at once. I think sometimes the easy way to explain it is a simple example. It's not unusual now to start renovating a house with a 30-year-old kitchen. 30-year-old kitchen's pretty old. It's still seen as a kitchen as part of the structure, the Division 43, that you claim over 40 years.
And it's still past 87. 30 years ago, it's still post 87.
So a property with a 30-year-old kitchen, it's quite possible that it's getting tired and you think about renovating that as an investor. It's still got 10 years or 1/4 of its life left from a tax perspective. So 1/4 of its value is still not depreciated or claimed in the Division 43 allowance. So 1/4 of what the cost of that kitchen was is potentially an instant deduction the year you rip it out.
And if I've got a schedule in place, so I don't need a scrapping schedule because I can just literally write off the remaining useful life of the depreciable assets that I've got on my tax return. Yep. But if I don't have that and I'm about to do a significant structural renovations with potentially a lot of this scrapping opportunity, what's the difference between that type of schedule that we might get done through BMT versus the traditional?
It's still a depreciation schedule. Now the difference is if you're going to rip it apart, so the important thing to take out of that is if you're about to rip it apart, call the Queensland first.
Because if it's in the skip bin out the front, you're in trouble, right? It has to be in situ.
Yeah.
Well, you got to prove it was in situ. And the easiest way to prove it's in situ is we've got photos in situ when we visited it. And it's another time when a site inspection is quite important because you can't go retrospect and go see it if it's been thrown away in the skip bin. But the importance of making sure that we look at it first, and the schedule's not any different. If we know that you're going to scrap it, we'd probably like a bit more detail around the cost of some of the things you're going to scrap, that we can do that. And we can do that retrospectively because we've got a photo of the kitchen. Your depreciation schedule doesn't actually split out your kitchen cost normally. Okay. So we need to do a bit of work to help you with that.
So it's a little bit of a sweetener for the outgoing or cost you're about to spend on the reno.
Well, let's land the plane. If you're about to if you bought a place and you're about to do demo day that you see on all of the renovation shows,
the fun
part. You
at the start.
You will want to actually have the depreciation schedule done before demo day.
Yes.
And if you don't, you've effectively in that scenario, what is sitting in the skip bin is effectively in that scenario 25% of its overall value, which is a non-cash deduction that you could have claimed, and we go back and do the numbers we did earlier in the episode, that you're just leaving money on the table, leaving that money with the ATO, and let's be honest, they don't need any more of your money than they should have.
You also paid to get rid of it.
That just paid for the skip bin. Hey, let's move on because we're flying through time here. But let's go to, we talked about the older property, and this is where we want the message to land for all of those people who have preconceived ideas around that. So we've now got a case study that we want to look at, which is a second-hand 4-bedroom house built in 1996 with a purchased by us by way of example in 2024. Purchase price $750,000, rent $680,000, the income $35,360, expenses $44,300. So our negative gear or pre-tax cash flow is sitting at $8,940 or negative $172. What happens when we get a depreciation schedule, Brad?
Yeah, very simple cash flow. We look at then what sort of deductions come out of this older property. $7,800 we found out of this particular property as a deduction the first full year. What that does to our cash flow is give us a non-cash tax deduction of what was $8,940 turns into $16,740 as a tax deduction, and because it's non-cash, it makes a big difference. Our tax loss then, or our refund then, goes from $3,300 to $6,194. The cost to own this property of the year turns from, after tax, from $5,632 to $2,746 per year. $108 to $53 a week, $55 a week difference.
$55 a week difference.
So the only difference between when you made a tax deduction for your losses on one side here and the other side where we've just also added a tax deduction for the non-cash.
You've asked the question of whether I should have a depreciation schedule. That's it.
Well,
and then you've executed on it.
Yes, right? I should, and the $55 a week is what the difference is in cash in my pocket.
One email inquiry or one phone call. Is this property worthy? Quick little
it's a bit
investigation.
Of the Do you think I'll get something?
I think you will. I think that's pretty confident. You use the little apps or whatever, and then all right, sounds like a smart investment for $715 to get $55 a week back.
And I think absolutely, and learning how to sort of run those numbers yourself on the properties you're looking at, and you guys help the clients with that obviously on the way through to go, well, I would like to know what the cash flow actually looks like. And you can get these estimates of depreciation at the start, so you can really crunch these numbers and see what it actually looks like before you go ahead.
Yep. Logistically wise, they get a depreciation schedule done with you. Someone's listening to this, they go, "Oh, it's a no-brainer. Why shouldn't I get it done?" What happens? Just so we can let everyone know, if they then go and buy an air conditioner in 2 years' time, do they leave it back to the accountant, or do you suggest that they update the schedule?
We have a way to update that at no cost, even like inside a portal that we've built that your schedule sits in. You can put in your air conditioner and it'll add it to your schedule and reshare it back to the accountant, which is why it's there. You can give the receipt to your accountant as well. You don't need me to cost up your air conditioner because you've got the cost. So we've tried to make a situation so you can add that to the depreciation schedule, and that's the best place for it to go. But there's a facility to do that at no charge as well once you've bought a depreciation schedule for us.
All right, talk us through this scenario with a commercial property. Purchase price here is $800,000 with just over $1,100 a week in rent. The income, so the pre-tax cash flow is a little bit tighter. So 57.2 coming in and 58.5 going out, meaning that pre-tax cash flow of $1,300 or $25 a week out of pocket. What are the differences between resi and commercial that people should be thinking about?
From a depreciation point of view, the difference, there's not a lot of differences. There's a few different rules on the effective life of some items, what you can and can't complain in general, other than one thing. The rules around second-hand plant and equipment that have happened to residential property has not happened to commercial property. So when you buy a commercial property that is second-hand or previously used, your 1-year-old carpet still has a claim, where it doesn't in your residential property. So it does, when looking at something that's slightly second-hand, mean that the numbers between a new property and second-hand property aren't as far apart as they are on a residential property.
Now, people are potentially going to ask around trusts or buying it in a company name for the residential. That is still applicable. The residential one is still applicable where you can't get the claim, right?
Yes. Trust in a direct company. The residential one hasn't changed, but we don't see people don't buy in direct companies. Generally, hardly ever.
The trust one.
We're making assumptions here, but let's remind the listeners why did it change? Why has commercial got a different? We're all laughing because we know the answer, but some people might not know.
So it changed in 2017, and the reason for change is that there is. Plant equipment could be revalued at a higher value, because when you buy the house the second time, you're kind of paying more for the stove than the first guy because you paid more for the house. And there was a flaw in the way that the legislation allowed that to happen, and the easiest way is to just knock it out. It was knocked out at the same time as you can no longer claim travel to your investment property to do work on it or to do whatever on it or to
even
visit
inspect it.
Now, the reason that really changed is because it was in Queensland and someone went for a holiday when they checked it and made a tax deduction, probably. And when they changed this, they thought that people are moving stuff from their house. I don't think it was a situation as quite to the extent that I guess the government thought at the time, where people are moving their fridge into their investment property and claiming a deduction for it. You can't do that. You shouldn't have done that now, and you now can't do it on any second-hand plant. The way they've done it doesn't make a lot of sense because it just needed jigging on how it was done. Second-hand carpet should have a residual value and should be able to write it off. But
what was it? They had a spin. There was a spin name for it. Remember when they announced it?
Integrity.
It was something like it was a realignment or an integrity measure.
Integrity measure.
Something along those lines, right? Of course they've got to spin it. Oh, look, it's about fair and balanced, and because they thought we were taking the piss, but we weren't. Like if we've got $1 million asset sitting in another state, we should be able to go and have a look at it and make sure it's operating or our property manager is doing what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
And if I've got it in a company name or some other entity, I can claim that, but not in my personal name. I think it's a crock, but they could put a cap on it. So rather than go to that extreme, and also, I think the same sort of principle should apply in terms of the remaining usable life, so.
And we went back, as soon as it happened, so it's the budget, we went back to Treasury and said, okay, there is a gap here. Here's the right way to do it. Let's fix it the right way. But not everybody knew what depreciation was, and they'd already announced something, and so they just continue along
but it's also a tax grab, right? So, so Brad sits on the board of Picker with me, Bryce, as you know, and for our community to know that. So, we're advocating for a reinstatement of what is fair and reasonable in running our small private rental accommodation businesses. I don't think we're asking for anything as a special favour. We just want fairness. So in other words, if I buy it in a company or a trust name, I can claim it. If I don't, I can't. Well, that's not good.
Well, if I buy it in a commercial asset, I can, but if I buy a residential...
To the point, like it. So
there's holes in the way that... There's legislation's got holes in it here and there.
Yeah,
and,
it does.
And it's just... You're just not treating the same people the same way. So, anyway.
We should round out this story. So for the commercial, out of pocket before depreciation, significantly cash flow in. Can you talk to those?
So look, we were at a total loss before of $1,300 or $25 a week. So not a lot. We get some tax refund for that, $480. The cost of the year ends up at $16 a week or $1,819 a year without depreciation. Depreciation on this particular property, we thought about $16,000 as the number. Now our deduction overall is $17,300. Refund at 37%, $6,401. And we end up with a property that becomes after-tax cash positive or positively geared, $98 a week. So instead of costing us $16 a week, with the depreciation schedule there, we end up at $98 a week positive after tax, $114 difference.
Cash flow positive, baby.
Jeez, I haven't had that since
claim it, don't claim it, $100 a week,
So that's compelling, right? In both scenarios, it's definitely compelling. Hey, you've delivered on what is essentially a masterclass on non-cash deductions, on knowing your numbers, on making sure you're getting your house in order to maximise your cash flow. My final question for you, mate, is probably, I'm a bit rusty on the details, but the 1985 and 1987 are significant dates. There was a period between 85 and 87 where depreciation was ramped up. Can you give us a little history lesson on that?
It was ramped up. It was started rather than ramped up. It was zero before that because that's the 85 date. Between 85 and 87, it was 4% against the structure instead of 2.5% against the structure, and it coincides with actually them quarantining negative gearing back in 1985.
It did coincide with
and they go, well, we need
to change.
Actually, we did that. We need to encourage investors to invest in property again, so we've got somewhere for people to live. Don't know. They should look.
History could give us a little clue.
So for that 2 years, in order to try to get investment in property and build new property, you actually got 4% of the construction cost instead of 2.5% on that Division 43 or building allowance component. Went for the 2 years till 87, where they then reinstated negative gearing, I think, and dropped it back to 2.5%, so it wasn't such a large amount. But that 4% only goes for 25 years, so it's actually run out now. And I don't know, it makes me feel a little older when back in the day there was all these 85 things, and it's like, oh, it's all gone now. And also
a sweet purchase. It's in a sweet spot.
Also the 40-year deductions, an 87 property, once it gets to 2027, there'll be properties that are after 87 that will have run out. I know that seemed like so long ago in 1998 when I started in this business. So that some of them were around over time. But there was that period of time that was 4%. Some commercial properties and short-term travel accommodation have 4%. And the latest is that the build-to-rent stuff that is coming out, if you've got more than 50 units and fit all those criteria as an incentive, they've brought it 4% to the multi-unit stuff in Division 43 deductions.
See, now, that I find sensible, right? If you want investment dollars to go into a particular solution, right, then and I'm a supporter of build to rent. I think it's important, but it needs to be in the mix, to make sure that we've got adequate rental accommodation. My question then is the same sort of thing, right? Rather than getting rid of negative gearing or tweaking that, what they do, what they could do is on new builds for mum and dad investors is to whack the 4% back in again. Right, so then all of a sudden, it's helping with that cash flow, and if I'm getting help with that cash flow, there's less pressure on me having to put the rent up. So there's little things like that they can do, as opposed to, the rhetoric and all the sort of discussions around banning negative gearing, and it's the investor is the one that's driven up the property price. It's just bunkum in terms of that's not true. I can show you, I've said this before, but I can show you many countries around the world and cities around the world where property prices are hellish expensive, and that's got everything to do with the income that people earn in that area and their ability to borrow money, period. It doesn't matter whether there's any tax incentives or not. It's just bunkum in terms of that's not going to stop property prices from going up. But we need supply, and ultimately we need an appropriate amount of supply. So having 4% on new and 2.5% on existing, I'd be okay with that. I mean, you and I both know that we don't buy that for our clients, but ultimately it makes a bit of sense.
And it would be, it just would be, okay, I know you don't buy it for the clients, but it's more deductions by buying newer stock, which you do get anyway, more deductions in the newer stock because it's newer and it costs more to build.
Correct.
But depreciation is not the only reason to buy, but it does change the cash flow a little bit in those early years when it's harder, and maybe some people would do that and invest into more supply, which is what we really need.
Hey, Brad, as we work towards home, is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you think that we should have talked to you about today?
I think we've covered a lot of the basic stuff there. And the key message we've got to really is that properties have got some deductions there. I'm still talking to people all the time, like go learn a little bit. You've learned a lot today in this period of time if you're listening. But learning enough about it so that you go, regardless of what the property is, let's just ask the question. Let's not cut a corner to try and save a couple of bucks that could cost you more, I suppose, because that's the thing I see a lot of. And sometimes they've got to redo it and pay again. That's not a cheap way to do it.
And how do we get access to the calculators?
Oh, the calculators are apps. They're free. BMT website, bmtqs.com.au has got plenty of info. Like it's got also just plenty of information.
Yeah,
use the apps, calculators on every sort of thing you can see.
Case study
they're
examples.
All free. Case studies of it and back issues of, we've got detailed studies on detailed case studies on scrapping, detailed diminishing value versus prime cost. We talked about most of the key things we've talked about today. We've run some decent case studies so you can read all day on depreciation if you like.
But you don't have to read all day.
You don't have to
all you got to do is make a phone call.
Yep, make a phone call. This property here.
Do I get money or not?
Yeah. If you're a nerd like us and you want to read the case studies, great. But the takeaway is, if you're got a false belief that suggests that you've got a property that might not benefit from depreciation, don't die wondering. Don't die wondering.
And I'd probably also say, and this is probably there's two things that people say to me. It's, but it's not new, right? We've covered that one today 7 times. The other thing is, I've got a good accountant. Doesn't my accountant look after it? You've probably got a good accountant. Your accountant should look after it and help you look after it. But sometimes they might think it might be too old. We are the friend of the accountant. We're local inside them. Talk to them before you do anything. It's absolutely okay.
Well, I can tell you that Brad invites us to an event that he does around the country, usually once a year.
Yep.
And it's a room full of accountants.
Yes.
They're there. So
to get educated.
Just so you, but they're alliance partners with Brad because they know that they have got this much tax act to be across, and why wouldn't they have that as a value add? The accountants in that room aren't seeing it as professional disrespect or anything. They see it as complimentary. So, hey mate, it's always a pleasure hanging out with you. What I'd say to anyone who's just been listening to this episode, Ben, is if there was an aha or a penny drop or something there, screenshot, send it to a friend of yours that you know is a property investor. I'm with Brad. I haven't, obviously he eats, sleeps and breathes this, but I reckon this conversation I've had so many times over 25 years thinking,
People should know this stuff. But hey, people watch YouTube channels about how an offset account works.
Yeah.
So we've just got to be reminded of the fact that there are people out there who are new to this.
Yes.
It was 4 years ago since we've done it, so it's been a nice little refresher.
Yeah, we need refreshers sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
I feel like I'm talking about it all the time sometimes, but got to be reminded now that there's new people out there that haven't had the experience throughout the time that have been dealing with properties. I've dealt with property investors for so long, and I've loved it. I've loved working with you guys and throughout the industry as we do.
So just a reminder, thanks Brad for joining us. Just a reminder, in the show description, we'll have a link where you can go download the form that's preloaded with the Property Couch discount. Just download that form, fill it out, send it off to these guys, and they will give you.
Or if you ring them direct,
mention us
and just drop the name in Property Couch.
And we'll honour that, yes.
And they'll look after you. Brad, as always, mate, good to hang out with you. Thanks for joining us on the couch today.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
Well, mate, there you have it. I mean, ultimately, I think it's a good refresher. I mean, we've obviously done conversations and episodes before in regards to, depreciation and the importance from a cash flow management point of view. It's money you're leaving on the table, and a lot of people, I think, just assumed with a lot of the changes several years back that there's potentially not an opportunity to access this depreciation so they can improve their cash flows. Well, we've given you a couple of case study examples. Brad's done a great job there, and I think it's just you've got to ask the question, I suppose, is the big takeaway. There's no harm in asking that question to see whether you're entitled to claiming those rightful depreciations on your property.
Yeah, it's like if you gave me 80 cents and I was going to give you $2.50 back, would you take that trade? The answer is most people would. Well,
yes, absolutely.
That's effectively what we're talking about here. If you pay upfront for a depreciation schedule, 9 times out of 10, you're getting far more than what you paid back. And not only in the first year, you get it ongoing as well. So it's, the power of the non-cash deduction to unlock thousands of dollars that can go into your pocket. Now, you and I have been talking about this concept for an eternity, Ben, like late 90s. So it kind of feels like to us that everyone knows about it, but not everyone does. Not everyone does. It's
no, not everyone does. And just remember, if you are going to use BMT, there's nothing in it for us, but there are potentially also savings in it for you. If you just mention the Property Couch.
Yes.
What you need to do is just mention the Property Couch, and the details will be in the link in the show description.
Yeah, there's a form that we can send you that you can just fill out. It's already got that discount populated. And to Ben's point, $0 to us. Just the comfort of knowing that people are getting a good outcome is what we're doing it for. So thank you, Brad. Always generous with your time. He was in the studio with us, which was a lot of fun. Those case studies hopefully landed the plane for a few people as well. And for those that are new to the concept, we also covered 101 as well, which is pretty cool. But mate, next week we've got a Ripper episode lined up, Q&A. It's one of our favourite times of the month when we get to Q&A, mate. But until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
There you go, folks. Heard it here first. See you next week.